Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And when I asked the question to the Prime Minister back in November of last year, it was very specific about the impact the carbon tax is having on the price of food. Yet the Parliamentary Secretary just let slip something that runs completely contrary to the narrative that the Liberals propagate on a daily basis. Even the announcement they made today with their so-called carbon tax rebrand. And Mr. Speaker, it's this. That Parliamentary Secretary said that it is a feature of the carbon tax that you raise the prices on the things that they don't want. So what does that translate to? Well, that translates to higher cost for Canadians to be able to afford things like the groceries and other essentials at the grocery store. That relates to higher costs on the transportation of the goods we need that are essential to our economy. That translates to higher costs for our farmers and producers. Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Liberal narrative on the carbon tax is that it is doing what it was designed to do, and that is raise prices. Yet it does not lower emissions. That's been proven very, very clear. I referenced earlier today, Mr. Speaker, that I heard a tragic example of how a food bank in Flagstaff County, Lynn sent me this email, and I know Lynn, and I appreciate her community volunteerism and activism. She talked about how clients to their food bank are lying about where they live and how many people are in their homes. Now, why would this happen? Well, one would think that lying is a bad thing. But Mr. Speaker, they're lying out of desperation because they're hungry. So this small town food bank in a rural county in Alberta, because of the price of food, you have Canadians that are forced into a position where they are lying, knowing that that could mean they're banned from the very food bank that they need. Mr. Speaker, it is a tragic consequence of the policies that those ministers, that Prime Minister, and of course we need to not leave out of the conversation the lackeys in the NDP that are propping up the corruption, propping up the high prices, propping up the inflation, and propping up the carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, there is a part of this conversation, in addition to higher prices being a feature, not a flaw of the carbon tax, the fact that emissions are not a part of the conversation, even though they claim time and time again it is, when their own numbers say that it is not. Mr. Speaker, it's that how high is it going to go? In 2015, the Liberals ran, and that Prime Minister, and many of those who were elected, ran on a platform that that promised that the price would never go more than $50 a ton, that the carbon tax would never be more than $50 a ton. They said that was the maximum, never be any higher, that you could take it to the bank. Well, Mr. Speaker, that ended up to be the furthest thing from the truth. It was revealed, not 4 years later, that their actual plan was $170 a ton. And they covered it up. They were not honest with Canadians. But here is the question that I would ask in a follow-up to the cost of living crisis so many Canadians are facing, where more than half of Canadians, the indirect and direct costs of the carbon tax are leading to them having less money in their pockets because the government is taking it away from them. My question very, very clear, and I hope the Parliamentary Secretary listens and responds directly. Will they follow the direction of certain international entities and activists that are calling for them to raise the carbon tax even higher? We hear as high as $1,000 a ton. So my question is, do they plan for that carbon tax to go higher that will rise the cost on everything? I'd like a clear answer, please.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's unfortunate the Honourable Member doesn't understand how a price on pollution works or why it's necessary. Canadians expect their elected representatives to pursue tangible solutions to combat issues like affordability and climate change. In the past year alone, Canadians have endured severe climate-related events, including wildfires, droughts, heavy snowfall, torrential rain, and tornadoes, marking some of the worst in our nation's history. These severe climate events are having a direct impact on food prices. Climate action is an economic necessity, and our government has a plan. We know a price on pollution is the most effective and least costly way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions while putting money back into the pockets of most Canadians. In provinces where the federal fuel charge applies, the proceeds generated from the price on pollution are returned to Canadians. In fact, 8 out of 10 households in these provinces receive more money back through quarterly carbon rebates than they pay. For example, a family of 4 residing in Alberta can receive up to $1,800. Canadians are understandably worried as elevated global inflation and high interest rates continue to squeeze their finances. The economic environment has driven up the cost of far too many necessities, everything from housing to groceries. And while Conservatives would have us think that carbon pricing is the main culprit, research from the University of Calgary reveals that the price on pollution adds less than a penny for every dollar spent on major expenses by Canadians. Our government is actively tackling affordability issues by introducing new measures to alleviate the financial strain on Canadians. In the fall economic statement, we unveiled a comprehensive plan to bolster affordability and support Canadian households facing financial strain. Our government has made significant amendments to the Competition Act aimed at fostering greater competition within the grocery sector, to lower costs and expand choices for Canadian consumers. Our government is also cracking down on junk fees like international roaming charges and overdraft charges from banks that are costing Canadians. And we're protecting homeowners with new mortgage relief measures. Mr. Speaker, our government is moving forward with meaningful actions to make life more affordable in this country, all while fighting climate change.
Honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
See, Mr. Speaker, here's what's interesting. I gave the opportunity for that member to deny very, very clearly if their plan was to raise the carbon tax to $1,000 a tonne. She refused to do so. Now, the Minister of the Environment, the criminal socialist activist that serves as Environment Minister of this country, has made it very, very clear that it is.
I'll remind the honourable member that we can't call someone criminal. Let's back that rhetoric up just a little bit. The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
The formerly convicted activist who faced criminal charges has said even the other day, Mr. Speaker, that he didn't want, that the government had decided not to build any more roads. The Canadians should simply take a walk. Well, here's my suggestion, and I would hope that that member would support the many Canadians that reach out to me from across the country, from across this country, from coast to coast to coast, Mr. Speaker, that are saying that that Environment Minister, that Prime Minister, and the Leader of the NDP are the ones that need to take a walk. And maybe instead of rebranding the carbon tax that is driving up the price of everything, let's rebrand the Prime Minister of this country and elect the member from Carleton to be Prime Minister to bring common sense and bring home a government that actually works for Canadians.
Just also need to remind folks not to bang on the desk because interpreters don't really like it. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, I was just saying to someone today how the ability to have respectful dialogue with each other and to disagree in an agreeable way is disappearing. And I'm really disappointed with the honourable member and the way he conducted himself during that rebuttal, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't add to productive dialogue on issues, and it's unfortunate that we can't have conversations in a meaningful way. So I think my time's probably almost up, Mr. Speaker, but it's really unfortunate that the Leader of the Opposition and his party don't have a plan to tackle climate change, nor do they have any desire to have a respectful conversation on this issue or any other issue, Mr. Speaker.